I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
I got a chance to talk to a group of women who support the president, who made their own church, which say, Jesus is my savior, Trump is my president, and directly on the back of their shirts it says, he is the chosen one.
Communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin.
They're destroying the blood of our country. That's what they're doing. They're destroying our country. They don't like it when I said that. And I never read Mein Kampf.
The man that I worship is also a convicted felon.
I think God chose him to get this country right, get us back on our feet, and get us back with the Lord like we need to be.
Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote. I don't think you're going to have another election in this country if we don't win this election.
Make this one for Jesus, okay? Make this one for Jesus. That's what I tell him. That's would be a damn good thing.
She looks down with contempt on the hard-working Americans, saying that ignorance is pervasive in many parts of this country.
On a spiritual note, Jesus was also found guilty, and everybody still loves Jesus, feel me? You know what I mean? So, like, if Trump is found guilty, doesn't mean that we still love him. We already know that's that radical left cheat code stuff.
Even if they put him in the jail cell, we still going for him.
Ballot harvest and all the type of this. Like, this is just gonna be the cherry on top that sets off either the Civil War, World War III, if he actually get arrested. It'll be the cherry on the top.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. I'm calling on Crooked Joe, corrupt Attorney General of New York, deranged Jack Smith, bird brain. Nikki becomes president. They're poisoning the blood of our country. They're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals. They ought to release the J6 hostages. They've suffered enough. Their comments are helping to fuel the rise of a dangerous, militant hard left.
Jesus was arrested and murdered by the Roman government.
If you don't use certain rhetoric, if you don't use certain words that maybe are not very nice words, nothing will happen. Somebody said to me the other day, "You're the most famous person in the world by far." I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." They said, "Yes, you are." I said, "No." They said, "Who's more famous?" I said, "Jesus Christ."
For many years, the question, "What would Jesus do?" was on the lips of many Christians. The rhetorical question was meant to help believers think about their actions towards others. It was a kind of ethical shorthand. However, since the advent of Donald Trump onto the political scene, a number of religious leaders have turned to more obscure biblical figures for models of leadership, including the 6th century BCE Persian king, Cyrus. The idea is that even if Trump doesn't embody Christian values, such as humility, some of his actions have brought results that many evangelicals support. They often point to the US Supreme Court appointments that led to overturning Roe v. Wade. Another biblical figure likened to Trump is the 9th century BCE Israelite king Jehu. Jehu's coup was waged against the line of the Israelite king Ahab and his foreign wife Jezebel. It's worth noting that evangelicals have at times compared both Trump's presidential opponents, Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, to Jezebel. These analogies misrepresent the current political reality. Biblical monarchy is not a model of American democracy, and biblical texts are too complex for easy analogies. These biblical stories are not a manual for how to run a nation or a people. Rather, they should perhaps be viewed as ethical texts on how not to run a nation or people, how not to behave, and how not to conduct oneself. It's especially telling that some evangelical Christian leaders have chosen as their models for the President of the United States 2 biblical kings who waged bloody wars, but they conspicuously avoid comparing Trump to the most prominent biblical figure, Jesus. Jesus' social policies have come out of favor, so Jesus is not a model for a national leader. It's important to note that some Trump adherents have, in fact, compared him to Jesus Christ. particularly when he was on trial. Before and after Trump's historic indictment and arraignment, countless MAGA Republicans noted the Holy Week timing and blasphemously compared Trump to Jesus. As Trump was crucified and then rose again on the third day, so too will Donald Trump, tweeted one right-wing lawyer known for representing January 6th insurrectionists. Other influencers making the comparison include Representative from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, TPUSA Faith founder Charlie Kirk, and even Trump's own attorney. Trump himself framed his arrest as an attack on Christians in an emergency prayer call on Tuesday, April 4th, 2024, with televangelist and longtime aide Paula White Cain, attorney Rudy Giuliani, and MAGA worship leader Sean Fecht. Trump's sycophants are right about one thing. There is indeed a parallel between Donald Trump's arrest and Holy Week, but it's not between Trump and Jesus. It's between MAGA leaders and Pontius Pilate, the brutal Roman governor who ordered Christ's crucifixion. Not only would Jesus never pay anyone hush money to change the outcome of an election, he wasn't even a politician. And when the devil tempted Christ with earthly authority, he flatly refused to take it. Neither did Jesus support political violence the way Trump seems to delight in it. In fact, when the disciples drew weapons to prevent Jesus' arrest, he told them, "All who take the sword will die by the sword." Pontius Pilate, on the other hand, was a regional Roman dictator known not only for his cruelty, but also for his alliance with local religious leaders. The high priests were eager to collude with the governor, including to crucify Jesus, because it allowed them to keep their status and personal freedom. In turn, Pilate benefited by having allies who could keep his subjects in line and thus keep him in power. It was a great deal for everyone but the people. 2 millennia later, a nearly identical bond has been forged between conservative American Christians and MAGA Republican politicians like Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Under the blessing of conspiracy theory preachers like Franklin Graham, Mike Huckabee, and Paula White Cain, these politicians use and abuse religious imagery to create a culture where disagreeing with them is no longer seen as civic discourse, but an act of blasphemy. To them, indicting a corrupt Republican politician like Trump isn't an example of a healthy democracy, but a demonic attack on a holy figure anointed by God. This is part of what academic scholars and Christian activists mean by the term Christian nationalism. It's the heretical merging of American and far-right Christian identities to proclaim that only conservative Christians count as true Americans and that only right-wing Republicans can be considered true Christians. This co-opting of religion for political power isn't just blasphemous, it's also dangerous, repeatedly leading to real-world violence, such as the January 6th insurrection in 2021. Far too many moderate, progressive, and apolitical pastors decline to acknowledge or speak out against the merger of MAGA and religion, whether it's because they misunderstand the separation of church and state, or because they're afraid of losing church members. But for all their attempts to stay out of the fray, these pastors are sending an unintended yet devastatingly dangerous message. When prominent far-right televangelists and pastors invoke Jesus' name to support Trump's authoritarianism, and when Donald Trump uses prayer calls to falsely tell Christians that they're under attack and he's their only defender, the silence from the rest of the complicit pulpits can lead Americans to believe that the church takes the same position. Silence is acceptance.
Mr. President, no one has paid the price like you have paid the price. It almost cost you your life. You were betrayed and arrested and falsely accused. It's a familiar pattern that our Lord and Savior showed us. But it didn't end there for him, and it didn't end there for you. God always had a plan. On the third day, he rose, he defeated evil, he conquered death, hell, and the grave. And because he rose, we all know that we can rise. And sir, because of his resurrection, you rose up. Because he was victorious, you were victorious. And I believe that the Lord said to tell you this. Because of his victory, you will be victorious in all you put your hand to.
Do you see any checks on your power on the world stage? Is there anything that could stop you if you wanted to?
Yeah, there's one thing, my own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop, and that's law. Very good. I don't need international law. I'm not looking to hurt people.
Do you feel your administration needs to abide by international law on the global stage?
Yeah, I do. I do. But it depends what your definition of international law is.
We live in a world, in the real world, Jake, that is governed by strength, that is governed by force, that is governed by power.
Every once in a while, we got to send a bunch of commandos to kick in your door and drag you into a helicopter in the middle of the night in handcuffs.
We are the dominant predator, quite frankly, force in the Western Hemisphere.
What rules the world and has ruled humanity is the law of the jungle. We rule the jungle. We are the lion.
It is alarming that we have not been able to see or hear from any of the Iranian people. And I imagine that is because their internet is shut down. And I think there is some general worry about them. Obviously, their government treats them terribly and killed tens of thousands of them in January. Like Kayleigh, I would never ask you to tell us something that is classified, but do you have any insight as to how they are doing? Do they have drinking water? Do they have food?
Right, I do.
It's upsetting.
I do. But first, you remember when we had lunch years ago in the base of Trump Tower when it was a brand new building?
It was a long time ago, yes.
A long time ago, and you haven't changed.
Oh.
You have not changed. Now, I'm not allowed to say this. It's the end of my political career, but you may be even better looking, okay? So I don't know what you're doing. But I will not say
makeup has a lot to do with that.
I will not say that because that will end my political career. You know, you're not allowed to say a woman's beautiful anymore.
Donald Trump imagines himself to be a moral crusader fighting the forces of evil at home and abroad. But his morality is not guided by ethics, humanism, or respect for the common good. The president instead relies solely on himself, something he made explicit in a January 2026 interview with the New York Times. "My own morality," he replied, when asked if he observed any constraints on his power. In his mind, Trump is the beginning, end, and final judgment of what constitutes right and wrong, and he feels free to impose his dogma on America and the rest of the world. His is a totalistic mindset, and it's one of the defining features of a personality cult like MAGA. In the president's framework, good is defined as those who support him and MAGA. Evil means those who oppose him and his agenda. In this zero-sum view of the world, any perceived enemies must not merely be defeated, but entirely vanquished. Trump has institutionalized this immoral vision as a governing philosophy, where loyalty to him and MAGA, and not to the rule of law, the Constitution, or America's democratic norms and traditions, are paramount. Internationally, Trump's simplistic, binary moral framework undermines the rules-based international order because it negates the role played by shared interests, pragmatism, and common values. Trump's fixation on evil is not grounded in deep contemplation, a coherent moral philosophy, historical understanding, or any consistent ethical framework to, for example, make the world safe for democracy by abolishing fascism and other forms of real danger. Instead, it's wholly contingent and circumstantial, defined by what serves his own self-interest and corrupt needs and wants at any given moment. The same man who describes Iran's leaders as making up one of history's vilest regimes has also repeatedly praised Russian President Vladimir Putin, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, and Chinese President Xi Jinping as, quote, tough guys worthy of his admiration. Trump's standard, then, is not evil. It's whether someone has the kind of power he craves for himself in the MAGA movement. Like other conflict entrepreneurs, leaders who manufacture and escalate conflict for political and personal gain, Trump deploys moral language to silence dissent at home and justify aggression abroad. The enemy within and enemy without are both expressions of the same totalizing framework. Those who support Trump are good, those who oppose him are evil, and evil must be vanquished. The logic of domination abroad and authoritarian rule at home are not separate projects. They reflect the same authoritarian project. If Trump believes himself to be a crusader fulfilling a divine prophecy, Why in the hell would he ever let himself be constrained by public opinion, Congress, democratic norms, or the rule of law? This is not merely a democracy crisis, it's a moral crisis in the most profound sense. A leader has placed himself beyond moral accountability entirely. In the process, he has convinced tens of millions of Americans that this isn't a catastrophe, but rather some kind of great crusade. Many American Christians are being led by a man who believes his only restraint on power is his own morality. The problem is, Trump is bereft of morality. Trump himself confesses that if there is a heaven, he's not going. The glaring question for America's Christian Trump followers is thus, where exactly do you think Trump is leading you? A better question might be, who or what is Trump actually luring you away from?
It is my great honor to introduce, and I think I can say this not as senior advisor, but as his friend, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, the greatest champion of faith that we have ever had in the executive branch, the 45th and 47th president. Stand to your feet and give him the biggest welcome of the United States, a man I am honored to call friend, President Donald J. Trump.
No administration in modern history has done more to confront the plight of persecuted Christians around the world than we have. With us, it's a mission. It's actually a mission. On Christmas Day, in close coordination with the government of Nigeria, we worked with them, but they got to get tougher. I ordered powerful airstrikes to decimate the ISIS terrorists who have been slaughtering Christians in that country by the thousands. It's not even believable. We hit them so hard, they still don't know what the hell happened. And we were going to do it on a different day. I said, no, do it on Christmas, so they understand it. Remember, Christmas was, when I ran in 2015, when I announced, I said, we're going to bring back Christmas, because the word Christmas was almost gone, and we did. People use Christmas anymore. We brought back the word Christmas. They didn't want to use it, and we're using it again. But I specifically told Pete, I said, hit him on Christmas Day. Not earlier and not later, right, Pete? And man, did he hit him. I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven, okay? I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. I may be in heaven right now as we fly in Air Force One. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make heaven. If we didn't have to fight this horrible governor and this horrible fake mayor, Fry, people don't want to be mugged. They don't want to have a murderer living next door that was, killed 3 people in a certain country and is now living beautifully here. Because generally speaking, if they've killed in another country, they're not going to be the best of citizens. And they're rough people. Remember in the campaign, I used to say that their criminals make our criminals look like babies. It's true. These are some of the meanest, most vicious people. They only gave us the worst. They don't send, they're very smart. Guys like the president over here, El Salvador. He's sent us a few. I don't want to talk to him about it. But he sends us some real bad ones. He's not, look, you just say it, we'll do it more positive. Isn't it true that you will not send your good people to the United States? Wouldn't you say? Look at him. He doesn't know. He said, what's going on here? But no, he sends bad people to the United States. And I'm going to talk to him after this. But I love him. He's done a great job, right? They're smart people. And they're very streetwise. When you're running some of these countries in South America, Latin America, you got to be streetwise. You got to be smart. He's very smart, very streetwise. But these leaders of those countries, they're not sending. They cherish their good people. They only send us their bad people. But we have done some job, and we have lunatics over there that are stealing money, by the way, also. I believe it's actually a cover-up of the $19 billion at least that they've stolen. I actually think they do this as a cover-up. Under the Trump administration, we're standing strongly behind Americans of faith, stopping the attacks
on our values, our traditions, defending religious liberty, like no president. I believe like no president has ever done before. I do believe that.
The National Prayer Breakfast was founded in 1953 when President Dwight Eisenhower accepted an invitation to join members of Congress to break bread together. Every president since has participated, regardless of their party or religious persuasion. The Prayer Breakfast offers an opportunity, according to its organizers, for political leaders to gather and pray collectively for the nation in, quote, the spirit of love and reconciliation, as Jesus of Nazareth taught 2,000 years before. Donald Trump never got that memo, or if he did, he's found ways to ignore it. In a rambling 75-minute speech at the Prayer Breakfast in February of 2026, we saw the quintessential Trump. His comments were grievance-filled, narcissistic, conspiratorial, factually false, divisive, and insulting. He referred to his critics as, quote, lunatics. He engaged in projection, comparing them to dictators and the Gestapo. He labeled Republican Representative Thomas Massie as a moron because Massie won't cast legislative votes the way Trump wants. Joe Biden was Crooked Joe, while Jacob Fry was called the horrible fake mayor of Minneapolis. Trump praised El Salvador's authoritarian president, Nayib Bukele. Bukele has referred to himself as the world's coolest dictator for his, quote, very strong prisons. The prison that Trump celebrated, known as CCOT, is notorious for its cruel and inhumane conditions. Trump emphasized that Bukele, who also spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast, was one of his favorite people. And Trump took credit for churches coming back, quote, stronger than ever, and for religion being, quote, hotter than ever. The spirit of love and reconciliation that Jesus taught 2,000 years ago was not particularly evident in the words of the president. Of course, it never has been. And yet, the audience of some 3,500, the great majority of whom undoubtedly claim to be followers of Jesus, responded to Trump's remarks with a standing ovation. It's a testimony to the marketing genius of Donald Trump that he never sold himself to Christians as one of them, pious, devoted, merciful, forgiving, irenic, biblically literate, a faithful husband and father, a man of high moral standards. Instead, he sold himself as their protector. He didn't hide his cruelty or his belief that the ends justify the means. Doing so would have been impossible for him because they're central features of his personality. So, he did the opposite. He presented himself to Christians as a fierce, even ruthless warrior on their behalf. It worked. He built a huge, loyal, fanatical following. The public persona of Donald Trump often presents a paradox, one that's becoming more pronounced as his presidency progresses. He recently made a candid statement about his prospects for getting into heaven, noting that he's probably not getting there. This admission, however cheeky as it may have been, is a notable deviation from the typical rhetoric of a politician who relies heavily on the support of evangelical Christians. It stands in stark contrast to his past assertions, like his refusal to ask for forgiveness because he doesn't believe he's done anything wrong. His supporters appear to ignore these contradictions, chalking them up to jokes or simply ignoring them in a display of what's been termed as cult-like loyalty. This is one of the most remarkable things about Trump's base, the ability to ignore the hypocrisy. For example, while his administration's Director of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., espouses anti-vaccine conspiracy theories, Trump himself quietly received a COVID booster and flu shot during a recent trip to Walter Reed Hospital. This visit was initially framed as a routine annual checkup, a claim that was quickly debunked since he had already undergone one earlier in the year. The fact that he went to a hospital rather than the White House infirmary suggests the need for more significant medical care, a reality that his base seems determined to ignore. This kind of vaccines for me, no vaccines for thee mentality highlights a deep-seated hypocrisy within the Republican Party's leadership. The question becomes, what exactly is Trump leading Christians towards?
I'm sick and tired of hearing about all of the radicals and the perverts and the liberals and the leftists and the communists coming out of the closets. It's time for God's people to come out of the closets, out of the churches, and change America. We must do it.
That I continue to look to the scriptures today for fulfillment and for guidance. Indeed, it is an incontrovertible fact that all the complex and horrendous questions confronting us at home and worldwide have their answer in that single book.
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Oh, maybe that's what I said.
You know, in the days before my father passed away in 2007, he joked with CNN that he dreamed that Chelsea Clinton had interviewed him about the 3 greatest threats facing this nation. He replied, those 3 greatest threats are Osama, Obama, and your mama.
This is a government jobs program that lets in more migrants.
Not to mention how much we're paying for the migrants' kids to go to school.
But now the migrants are shutting down the hospitals in Denver more than COVID ever did.
We shouldn't be allowing even one migrant into the country.
Isn't this really an attempt, ultimately, to destroy the country internally?
That's exactly what it is.
Evangelicals, Christians of every denomination, and believers of every faith have never had a greater champion, not even close, in the White House than you have right now. I think you know that.
Jeffers? Yes. Prayer? Let's pray together, may we? Yes.
Studies dating back to the 1950s, such as Adorno's The Authoritarian Personality, describe a consistent psychological pattern amongst those who back authoritarians. These people tend to crave order, they fear ambiguity, and they feel safe when someone strong tells them what's right and wrong. They're drawn to authority figures who punish outsiders and promise to restore greatness. Trump didn't just fit that archetype, he weaponized it. MAGA didn't create resentment, it exploited it. As social change accelerated in the 21st century, millions of Americans felt left behind economically, culturally, and racially. When the world grows too complicated, resentment becomes an identity. MAGA offered folks a simple story. It's emotional cocaine. It numbs confusion with resentment. Right-wing media, from Fox News to QAnon, built an ecosystem that feeds people a steady diet of fear, lies, and self-righteousness. Algorithms reward anger, not logic or critical thinking. And what used to be considered cruel, like mocking the disabled, vilifying immigrants, and excusing violence, becomes patriotic. The more absurd or hateful the belief, the more it proves loyalty. That's how cults work, and MAGA's no different. The most dangerous form of MAGA isn't political, it's theological. Christian nationalism has wrapped Trumpism in the language of divine mission, turning a political cult into a crusade. It tells followers that America was founded as a Christian nation, that secular democracy is satanic, and that dissent is rebellion against God. Once faith and politics fuse, compromise becomes sin, and violence becomes holy. These people aren't really trying to save Christianity, they're weaponizing it. They've convinced themselves it's God's will to create a Christianized America, a kind of Christian Iran where joy does not exist, and fear is the weapon of choice. In that world, dissent is blasphemy, and democracy is heresy. They're not fighting for religious freedom, they're fighting for control. Christian nationalism doesn't elevate faith, it corrupts it. It gives moral cover to cruelty and calls vengeance virtue. It wraps hate in hymns and convinces believers that bigotry is a form of obedience. It's a religion emptied of reflection, where conscience is replaced by command and curiosity by fear. The Sermon on the Mount has been tossed aside, replaced with slogans that sanctify anger and call it righteousness. When citizens believe they're soldiers in a holy war, there's no line they won't cross because they think heaven is on their side. That's why this movement represents the gravest internal threat to this country since 1861, the Civil War. MAGA isn't a political movement, it's a psychological and spiritual obsession. It feeds on fear, resentment, and the illusion of moral superiority. It gives the lost cause and the cruel a permission slip. History shows that movements built on lies and hate collapse under the weight of their own stupidity, but truth doesn't rebuild itself. Decent people do.
And let me start by quoting from a review of this novel, Atlas Shrugged, that appeared in Newsweek. It said that you are out to destroy almost every edifice in the contemporary American way of life, our Judeo-Christian religion, our modified government-regulated capitalism, our rule by the majority will. Other reviews have said that you scorn churches and the concept of God. Are these accurate criticisms?
Yes.
The core of Ayn Rand's amoral philosophy and worldview was an unabashed exaltation of individualism. Any concern for the community was, she believed, naive collectivism, which, in her view, was a slippery slope towards Bolshevism. Rush Limbaugh once referred to Ayn Rand as a, quote, brilliant writer and novelist. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson said Rand's novel, Atlas Shrugged, was a foundational book in shaping his worldview and political philosophy. Former Republican representative from Wisconsin, Paul Ryan, said that Rand, more than anyone else, did a fantastic job of explaining the morality of capitalism. It's, he said, that kind of thinking, that kind of writing that is sorely needed in the world. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who was named in honor of the nihilist author, likewise hailed, "I'm a huge fan, and I've read all her novels." Ayn Rand is the truest representative of the neoconservatives' Darwinist vision for America, one where the individual is responsible only for the individual, and selfishness is a virtue. The neocons' worldview, as espoused in Rand's novels, was a stark departure from the old guard conservatives' more moralist worldview. For many years, both political parties mostly agreed on the basic Enlightenment-era values first championed by Jesus Christ of Nazareth, that those with power were morally required to aid those without it, especially by helping the poor navigate out of poverty. The Republicans and Democrats, of course, often disagreed on the policies to foster these moralities, but both generally agreed on the importance of helping the poor in order to ensure as strong a nation as possible. That belief changed in the decades after the 1960s. Poverty is now widely deemed by the likes of Louisiana Representative Mike Johnson as a result of an individual's own moral failure, and that can't actually be solved by a secular government. After the resounding defeat of the Republican John McCain in the 2008 general election by the upstart candidate Barack Obama, the neocons who ran the GOP had some soul-searching to do if they hoped to remain relevant in the fast-changing American political landscape. After the 2008 economic collapse, GOP leaders knew that they desperately needed a rebrand. GOP mega donors like the Koch brothers and Ellison family, however, had no interest in living in a society that adhered to the teachings of Jesus. They instead wanted to live in Ayn Rand's world. Hope and change after a decade of calamitous war waged on a set of lies with money borrowed from future generations of Americans, concomitant to a historic economic disaster, all of which were presided over by neocons who championed Ayn Rand's nihilistic worldview, and who had gained power in the year 2000 in no small measure due to a poorly designed butterfly election ballot in Palm Beach County, Florida, and a Supreme Court shaped in part by the first Bush presidency, were at last cast into America's political wilderness. So much so that the first Obama administration managed to pass the Affordable Care Act, which, just a decade earlier, seemed a delusion dreamt up by the Democrats' most socialist adherents. The GOP's megadonors feared more than ever since before World War II that the nation had begun its inevitable and long-feared backslide towards Rooseveltian socialism, which they simply could not or would not abide by. What, in this seemingly nascent age of hope and change presided over by a black man with sympathies towards working people, was the GOP to be? The party of Ayn Rand or Jesus? That was the conundrum the GOP had to wrestle with if it wanted to remain relevant. Being the party of Jesus was, the GOP's heavies decided, out of the question. That tact could logically lead to redistribution of their immense fortunes to the very poor people the GOP's most moneyed and ideologically driven donors had deemed lazy, stupid, and undeserving of their affluence. Secluded in their gated residential enclaves and key-carded think tanks, the party's brass set out to remove the proverbial people from the polity. The conservative donor class knew the party needed to seem to be what American people in the wake of 2008 craved most: populist leaders who espoused the teachings of Jesus Christ, but all the while being policymakers as self-interested and unconcerned with the needs and wants of others as Ayn Rand was. The GOP thus began relentlessly branding itself to the American people as a populist Tea Party and defender of Christianity in a country in which a secular big government boogeyman sought to deprive them of their amendments, particularly the first and second of the 10, all the while forcing gender and racial equality onto public school students who were mandated to take vaccines. Donald Trump stepped into the GOP's leadership breach in 2015 by descending a gold escalator in a New York high-rise apartment that he, despite bragging about not paying taxes and having already declared bankruptcy 4 times, owned. Trump twice won an American general election by selling America's most socially conservative voters that he, and he alone, was the man to protect and defend any voter who, for whatever logical or illogical reason, felt threatened by Obama's presidency. Trump's genius was turning the most destitute, independent voters in the country, and its wealthiest, into his voting bloc. Meanwhile, the political party he now helmed dismantled social programs that aided the poor, working, and middle classes, concomitant to reining in institutions that could limit corporate power and corruption. It did not matter to supporters that Donald Trump bragged about sexually assaulting women, not paying his taxes because he was, quote, too smart to do so, nor that he was an elitist New Yorker who any critical thinking person could see was the antithesis of a populist hero. Trump's glaring and egregious perfidy and his lack of character was no matter to supporters because the party was backed by another neocon and Ayn Rand fetishist named Rupert Murdoch. The Australian media mogul bought his American citizenship so as to skirt federal law and then bought an American TV station, which, by the time Trump descended the escalator in 2015, presided over the most powerful propaganda machine in human history. Fox News could, Murdoch and Roger Ailes were certain, transform Trump, the man who above anyone else unwittingly personified Ayn Rand's worldview, into appearing to be the preeminent protector and defender of Christianity and crony capitalism, all the while trampling on any legislation meant to help anyone but the donor class that paid to dupe Trump supporters into believing that the former reality TV star, this embodiment of Ayn Rand's reptilian worldview, was somehow anything but the antithesis of Jesus Christ. Donald Trump's entire life is antithetical to the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. That fact has only been magnified in the 47th president's orgy of retribution, corruption, and violence, both at home and abroad.
Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
Go to any rally in support of Donald Trump, and attendees can be found wearing t-shirts and hats, emblazoned with slogans such as "Jesus is my savior," "Trump is my president," and "God, guns, and Trump," and things like "Make America Godly Again." 8 in 10 white evangelical Christians backed Trump in each 3 of his election attempts. Robert Jones, president of the Public Religion Research Institute and author of books on white supremacy and American Christianity, said that the strong evangelical support for Trump isn't surprising. The slogan, "Make America Great Again," of course, echoes an ethno-religious vision of white Christian America. Trump's rallies take on the symbols, rhetoric, and agenda of Christian nationalism, which typically includes a belief that America was founded to be a Christian nation and seeks to privilege Christianity in public life. Trump endorsed a Bible edition that includes U.S. founding documents and the lyrics to Lee Greenwood's "God Bless the USA." Trump's campaign events have the feel of a worship service. The president has, at times, shared a God-made Trump video depicting him in messianic terms. Trump builds on the messianic theme with statements like, "They're not after me, they're after you, and I'm just standing in the way."
So God made Trump. I need somebody with arms, strong enough to rustle the deep state, and yet gentle enough to deliver his own grandchild. Somebody to ruffle the feathers, tame cantankerous World Economic Forum, come home hungry, have to wait until the First Lady is done with lunch with friends, then tell the ladies to be sure and come back real soon.
I believe in God. I am Christian.
I'm Presbyterian. Boy, that's down the middle of the road, folks, in all fairness.
The Bible certainly is one of, if not, I mean, it is the book.
My wife and I pray for you.
Thank you. Well, I need it probably more than anybody in this room. You can stay if you want it because you need the prayer more than I do, I think. I want to just pray for Arnold if we can for those ratings. I can understand the evangelicals to a certain extent saying, well, maybe he's not as nice as we want him to be, but they also want to see the country be great. Maybe he's not as perfect on the Bible, but I did go to Sunday school for many years, I want to tell you. I get sent Bibles by a lot of people.
Where are all those Bibles anyhow now?
Well, actually, we keep them in a certain place, a very, very nice place.
My second favorite book of all time. What's my first favorite book? The Bible.
The Bible is special. The Bible, the more you see it, the more you read it, the more incredible it is.
Are you an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. Proverbs, the chapter, never bend to envy. I've had that thing all of my life where people are bending to envy.
2 Corinthians, right? 2 Corinthians 3:17. That's the whole ball game.
There's no way I would ever do anything to do negative to a Bible. God is the ultimate. I mean, God created this.
In the ever-shifting sands of American evangelical ideology, one might expect biblical teachings on morality and ethics to serve as guiding principles in shaping political allegiances. However, recent history unveils a starkly different narrative, one where moral relativism reigns supreme, and the highest bidder for power is crowned king, regardless of their ethical bearings. Despite a laundry list of ethical and moral failings, Donald Trump has been embraced with open arms by evangelicals. From boasting about grabbing women by the you-know-what, to alleged hush money payments to porn stars, Trump's track record reads like a manual on how not to embody Christian values. Yet, in the twisted logic of evangelicalism, Trump is not just forgiven, but celebrated as a modern-day warrior for conservative causes. His flagrant disregard for moral standards is conveniently swept under the proverbial church pew, while his political victories are hailed as divine providence. It seems that in the eyes of many evangelicals, the ends justify the means, even if those means involve forsaking any semblance of Christ's teachings. In the peculiar world of fragile evangelical masculinity, Trump's brand of machismo is revered as a badge of honor. His sexual exploits, far from being condemned, are twisted into a narrative of virility and strength. In the evangelical playbook, a real man is defined not by his character, but by his ability to assert dominance and power, qualities that Trump seemingly possesses in spades. The evangelical obsession with masculinity reaches absurd heights, with leaders and followers alike fawning over Trump's faux alpha male persona. From his multiple marriages to his infamous affair with Stormy Daniels, Trump's sexual escapades are not seen as moral failings, but as proof of his manliness. In the warped logic of evangelicalism, a man who lusts after power in women is not just forgiven, but exalted as a paragon of masculinity. However, this view starkly contrasts with biblical models of leadership that emphasize virtues like humility, service, and sacrificial love, qualities markedly absent in Trump's public persona. Figures such as Jesus and Paul model leadership that uplifts the weak and serves the needy. not one that boasts about personal exploits or domination over others. The church's endorsement of this kind of behavior betrays its foundational teachings. In the end, the evangelical embrace of Trump is not just a political alliance, but a testament to the church's moral bankruptcy.
I brought my Bible. Okay?
I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics. 2 Corinthians, right? 2 Corinthians 3:17, that's the whole ball game. Where the Spirit of the Lord, right? Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And here there is Liberty College, but Liberty University. But it is so true. You know, when you think, and that's really, is that the one? Is that the one you like? I think that's the one you like because I loved it. And it's so representative of what's taken place. But we are going to protect Christianity. And if you look what's going on throughout the world, you look at Syria, where if you're Christian, they're chopping off heads. You look at the different places, and Christianity, it's under siege. This Bible is the King James Version and also includes our Founding Father documents. Yes, the Constitution, which I'm fighting for every single day, very hard, to keep Americans protected. Also, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance are all part of this. God bless the USA Bible, and it's just very important and very important to me. I want to have a lot of people have it. You have to have it for your heart, for your soul. Many of you have never read them and don't know the liberties and rights you have as Americans and how you are being threatened.
Although he claims to be a devout follower of Jesus Christ, Donald Trump typically declined to share a favorite verse or testament of the Bible. For instance, when trying to appease a reporter on the topic, Trump cited an eye for an eye as a favorite verse, though retribution is explicitly condemned by Jesus. Moreover, Trump's reverence for revenge is apparently so central to his modus operandi that he devoted an entire chapter in his book, Think Big, to the importance of retribution. Trump's religious identity is often viewed as a strategic tool for political purposes. His appeal to evangelicals is enhanced by various assertions, such as the claim that he collects Bibles, maintaining that the Bible is his favorite text, and his use of religious words and references to God at more than double the rate of any president of the former century. In fact, his use of religious language spiked once he won the party's nomination and was even more prevalent in states with higher religious populations. Many studies have pinpointed the significance of those appeals to the evangelical audience. Many evangelical voters were receptive to those appeals, revising both personal, moral beliefs and their opinions of Trump to remedy those juxtapositions. In the White House, former aides reported that, privately, Trump spoke caustically regarding faith leaders and their organizations. During his first administration, Trump didn't belong to a church. He visited a church just 14 times, and most of those were widely viewed as media events rather than private acts of worship. His most notable visit to a church was the St. John's Episcopal Church after protesters were cleared from the front. Marion Budd, the Episcopal Bishop of the Diocese of Washington, D.C., described Trump's photo op as antithetical to the teachings of Jesus. Trump's religious posturing has everything to do with political expediency from Christian nationalists. Throughout his presidencies, Trump has had a preternatural ability to exploit the worst features of America's racist history for his own advancement. And, on some level, he seems to have understood that the Bible has been used not only to defend the principles of love and redemption, but also, in the white Christian imagination, racial subordination.
Hey, Bible.
What are your thoughts right now?
We're going to protect Christianity, and I can say that. I don't have to be politically correct.
I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists.
I would like to thank the evangelical and religious community, because I'll tell you what, the support that they've given me and I'm not sure I totally deserve it. Has been so amazing and has had such a big reason for me being here tonight. True, so true. They have much to contribute to our politics.
As an early act of his second administration, Donald Trump created an anti-Christian bias task force chaired by Attorney General Pam Bondi. At the same time, he was slashing federal jobs and programs, threatening Medicaid, Head Start, the Department of Education, affordable housing programs, accommodations for the disabled, environmental protections, public health and safety, Social Security and Medicare, while scapegoating immigrants and trans kids. It's particularly ironic that Trump and Mike Johnson and those in the upper echelons of power are targeting those that the Bible is most concerned about: children, the poor, immigrants, the sick and infirm, women, the vulnerable, and the earth itself. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, the richest man ever to exist, who built his wealth and fortune off of exploiting the poor, goes so far as to call the impoverished, quote, parasites. After all, there are more than 2,000 biblical passages that speak about protecting the vulnerable, offering good news to the poor, stewarding God's creation, and bringing judgment down upon those with wealth and power who make people suffer. Parallel to the theological justifications for the system of segregation that came to be known as Jim Crow, a national theology of industrial capitalism emerged in the late 1800s and early 1900s. During the Gilded Age, a prosperity gospel and its theology of muscular Christianity flourished among the white upper class. Amid the excesses of the Second Industrial Revolution, they celebrated their own hard work and moral rectitude and bemoaned the personal failings of the poor. When the economic bubble finally burst in 1929 with the Great Depression, and with Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal, which ushered in an unprecedented era of financial regulation and labor protection, the nation's corporate class turned once again to the church to fight back and put its stamp of approval on free market aspirations. In the 1930s and 1940s, corporate titans enlisted conservative clergymen in an effort to promote new political arguments embodied in the phrase, quote, freedom under God. As the private correspondence and public claims of the men leading this charge make clear, this new ideology was designed to defeat the state power its architects feared most. Not the Soviet regime in Moscow, but FDR's New Deal administration. With ample funding from major corporations, prominent industrialists, and business lobbies such as the National Association of Manufacturers and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in the 1930s and 40s, these new evangelicals for free enterprise promoted a vision best characterized as Christian libertarianism. The phrase, freedom under God, captures the tension at the heart of the long battle over the Bible in this country, in which there have always been two diametrically opposed visions of freedom. On one side, the freedom of the vast majority of people to enjoy the fruits of their labor and live with dignity and self-determination, and on the other hand, the freedom of the wealthy to control society, sow division, and hoard resources for themselves.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you. Show your face. I'm not mad at you. That's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking veteran. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the
car.
Whoa!
Fucking bitch. What the fuck is wrong with you? is wrong with you? Honestly.
Vertical morality reveals why some MAGA-aligned Christians act in ways that contradict Jesus' teachings. For many Americans, the gap between Christian teachings and MAGA politics is baffling. How can people profess faith in Jesus, who preached love, mercy, and care for the oppressed, while supporting policies that punish immigrants, demonize LGBTQ people, and glorify cruelty, all while taking aid from the most needy to further enrich the already wealthy and powerful? It seems to present a paradox. Vertical morality measures righteousness not by goodness to others, but by something more simplistic. Vertical morality teaches that authority, power, and moral code of right and wrong, or acceptable and unacceptable, come from above, an external superior who designates rules, systems, and tenets that must be obeyed by those beneath. In the context of religion, the superior is God. In politics, it might be an authoritarian dictator. In a cult, it would be the controlling leader. Whatever the circumstances, the idea is that behaviors are only right or wrong based on what the figure in power says. Horizontal morality, conversely, prioritizes the well-being of neighbors, communities, and personal relationships. People with horizontal morality act in ways that cause the least amount of harm to those around them, regardless of beliefs. Someone with vertical morality may help someone in need because they believe that's what God wants them to do, versus someone with horizontal morality who may help that same person for the benefit of the person that needs the help. Rather than unquestioning obedience or superficial optics, horizontal morality focuses on genuine empathy, compassion, and love towards others. In Matthew 25, Jesus describes people who fed and clothed those in need, who welcomed the stranger, who took care of the sick and visited those in prison. He then says, "What you did for the least of these, you did for me." Jesus equates loving your neighbor, i.e. horizontal morality, with loving Christ, vertical morality. Evangelicals are taught that all morality comes from God, and therefore true goodness can only be spread by obeying God, even if it harms others. This isn't necessarily a bad thing if pleasing God manifests by following the teachings of Jesus, such as loving your neighbor, loving your enemy, promoting peace and taking care of the poor, the widow, the immigrant, and standing up for the marginalized. It, however, becomes dangerous when Christians weaponize this vertical morality for power, which is exactly what we're seeing with the Christian nationalism in the Trump administration. Today's conservative Christianity is less influenced by Jesus and more by the Old Testament and Paul. This is theonomy, the belief that Old Testament laws should be applied to modern society as an influence on Christian nationalist politics. It's the Christian variant of Sharia law being implemented by Project 2025 into American politics and society. Theonomy predates Jesus, and it's disinterested in evidence, science, progress, research, experience, or the inclusion of other worldviews. Theonomy is part of the Reformed theology that's been growing in the evangelical movement for the past 30 years. The story of Abraham, who was commended for his willingness to obey God's command to sacrifice his son Isaac despite the act's inherent immorality, is an example of vertical morality. Drawing from the most violent and extreme chapters of biblical history, theonomy frames unquestioning obedience as the highest virtue. even when it demands actions that defy compassion or common sense. And what might have once been religious debate becomes a broader cultural conflict thanks to the role of conservative Christians in writing Project 2025 and otherwise shaping public policy. MAGA Christians promote policies that often go against the teachings of Jesus. They justify this by promoting a view of God that is vengeful. They demonize all immigrants as criminals, all queer people as predators, all leftists as violent, and all Democrats as satanic, with no evidence to back these claims. And because they believe in a literal hell and God-ordained calling to make the nation Christian, they justify cruelty in the name of patriotism. Vertical morality has caused white conservative, MAGA-aligned Christianity to completely abandon the core of Christ's teachings because their focus is on self-interest and perceived moral purity. To them, they are Christians and haven't abandoned the faith at all. But their framework measures righteousness in a way that can excuse behaviors that the general public knows and sees aren't Christ-like. Vertical morality has been weaponized in the Trump administration. They have convinced people that they are of God, so it doesn't matter who they hurt in the process. They say Christian things, they quote scripture, they wear Christian merch, but they are wreaking havoc on the very people Jesus calls to love and care for. Matthew 15 says, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me." Vertical morality can bring genuine spiritual depth and discipline, but it has to work in tandem with horizontal ethics. Faith without works is dead. Faith without action is incomplete. Personal piety is performative if it isn't rooted in genuine love and concern for others.